I've done many difficult things in my life, but I have to tell you that was the most difficult decision I've ever made. Oh, I get a call from school and they tell me that it's time to go home, but your son is refusing to go home. Something turned in my stomach and there's a certain rage that came to the fore for, how dare you hurt my son? At this point, there's a heightened activity at work for reporters are being listed and distributed to different parts of the country. You're being told this is what you're going to be doing. So you know what's going, what's in front of you in terms of the amount of work. At home, I have this reality that my help needs to go because my son can't live in this reality. Catch here is, I'm a single mother. What to do? If I call the office one more time saying I don't have a nanny, I don't know what will happen to my job. I cannot leave my son on their own. By the time I was getting to the car, he had realized that I had left. And all I could hear is my son screaming at the top of his lungs, "Mommy, mommy, don't leave me." Everyone seems to be having it good. Mbona nini mbaya na mimi? What am I doing wrong? And people they drown in such thoughts. Hey there, welcome to Curveballs. My name is Gladys Gachanja and I have spent a considerable time in the media space and had the immense pleasure of interacting with people from all walks of life in my line of work. Now, one thing I have realized from it all and continue to observe is that everyone has an underlying story of how they got here, who they are, and what makes them tick. Now, I'm talking about stories that don't make it to the headlines next to the achievements and accolades, or at an alma mater reunion, or on that social media post, or even closer home, stories that never make it on dinner tables and catch-up sessions with family and friends. For some reason, we tend to shun this side of our lives dotted with struggle, difficulty, and pain. Whether it's divorce, loss of a job or a business failure, betrayal, struggle with mental health, chronic illness, loneliness, imposter syndrome, motherhood or the lack of it, or even death. Yet, these are experiences that each of us can relate to at one season or another of our lives, either directly or indirectly. From personal experience, I believe without a shadow of doubt, one person's testimony is another person's lifeline. So I'm offering this platform to those of us who are brave enough to give us a peep into the pages of their lives from which they have drawn strength from, vital lessons, a compass on how to do life, and keep showing up. It's time to be real about the curveballs in our lives and allow us to hold in high regard all the parts of us that make our journey and, by extension, encourage someone else on their journey. Speaking of curveballs, let me take a few steps back into memory lane. And the year is 2017. I remember we had two elections in this country, and it's one we had August 8th, the general election, and the presidential election in October, I think the 26th. And this is because the presidential election was nullified by the Supreme Court. I won't get into the drama of what happened then, but I'll take you into my world at that time. I remember being in the newsroom. I was positioned at the Bombers of Kenya, and I'm telling you, all I remember mostly is the cold there. Those nights were harsh. And I remember the few days before that, I had just discovered that I was living with a nanny from hell, and I did not know this. Interestingly, one of my colleagues had a cousin, I think, or a relative that lived in the same block I lived in. And she had noticed something was off in the way my help used to treat my son. And she just didn't know how to get the information to me because having to work long and odd hours, I would come in and out of the apartment building very early in the morning and come back very late at night. I can tell you most of my neighbors did not even know I existed, and I didn't know many of them because of this fact. And she told now my colleague to tell me she would like to talk to me about something that has to do with my help. So I made time to go see her, and she told me, I have been watching this nanny and the way she handles your child, and I am not comfortable. And I have done a bit more research, and even my own nanny tells me that the way she handles your son, it's not the best. And that child is so afraid to even tell you because of the threats that the nanny used to give him. You can imagine getting that news. And I was being told this during a work schedule, like the night after I came from this long day of work. And it broke me. It broke me in ways that I don't think I can find the words to describe, because my mind went into, I'm working so hard, and because of the time that I'm losing with my son, there's some things that were getting lost on me. So at this point, there's a heightened activity at work for reporters are being listed and distributed to different parts of the country. You're being told this is what you're going to be doing. So you know what's going, what's in front of you in terms of the amount of work. At home, I have this reality that my help needs to go because my son can't live in this reality. Catch here is, I'm a single mother. What to do? I remember that night sleeping on it, trying to figure out what do I do? How do I handle this? And whilst I was trying to figure that out, and the next day I went to work as usual, hoping that I would have a better idea of how to handle this by the end of the day. Word got out, I think, from the nanny of the lady who told me about my situation at home, and the nanny I had at home got to find out. So on this day, I get a call from school, and they tell me that it's time to go home, but your son is refusing to go home. And I wondered why. Or he's saying that he doesn't want to go home. He's afraid the nanny is mean to him, and he just has refused to board the bus. When I was being called, I was actually in the middle of scripting a story in the newsroom. Now, remember, I already have background information, and here I am trying to figure this all out as I'm trying to go about my business in the newsroom. I haven't told anyone because I am so sure if I bring this up at a time like this to say I need time to go figure out things at home, I would definitely either lose my job or it puts me at a disadvantage. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it is so bad that my son can't or doesn't want to go home. So we spoke with the teacher, and the teacher promised to speak to him. There's this particular teacher they bonded with when he got into school. And she said, I'll talk to him and make sure that at least he's able to get home. Now you do what you can on your part to be able to get home at the same time as him. Now, what I'm told later is that by the time he was getting home and he was getting off the bus, the nanny from hell had found out that I knew about it, and her first thought is that it's the school that had actually told me. So they told the bus minder, oh, nasikia umeambia mama kuhusu mimi na mtoto. Haya, ni sawa tu. Let's just say that evening before I got home, and unfortunately, because I was working on a story, I couldn't get home early enough. The nanny had been mean to my son again and really manhandled or mishandled my child. But because I came home and he was asleep, I did not know the difference. And this apparently is what used to happen a lot, because when he's asleep, he's not able to show me that he's struggling. But the next morning when I woke up, I remember I had been given a day off to compensate for the many days we'll be at the Bomas of Kenya or covering the elections. And I noticed that my son had this scratch at the back of his ear on the scalp. Now, if you know how hard it is to actually hurt your scalp, it's a very hard part of your scalp. But whatever she had done to him before had actually removed a bit of his skin at the back of his ear next to the scalp. And I remember when he stood on his crib, and that's how I got to see when I was hugging him. And he went, and when I looked, it still had, you know, the way blood clots on it? And something turned in my stomach, and there's a certain rage that came to the fore for, how dare you hurt my son? And I remember leaving him in the living room and coming into in the bedroom and calling the help to the living room. And it's like she already knew what I was going to tell her. And she came to me with all these excuses. Oh, meambiwa nini ni uongo, what? And I'm like, how can you say that when my son has evidence of what you've done to him? And I remember having that conversation with her and her pulling and tagging, and I just told her, you need to leave my house. I did not care how, when, where she was going to go. I just wanted her out of my house, or else I was going to call the police. And I remember her hurriedly packing her stuff and leaving. And at that point, I could hear my son crying in the bedroom, you know, because he could hear that the conversation was intense. And I remember when the help left, I broke down. It's like, you know, the way you've been holding something in and you just don't know how to process because so much is happening and you're just trying to figure out what to do with the information you have, and there's work to think about your son. And I'm like, okay, fine. Now I've been left. I have work to think about and I have a child to take care of. I remember breaking down and crying so hard. And at this point, my son had come out of the bedroom and he was just hugging me, and I was just trying to control myself. But I think everything was dawning on me, and the pressure and the weight of it all was just came crashing down. And all I was thinking is, at some point, okay, fine. Here we are. What do we do? If I call the office one more time saying I don't have a nanny, I don't know what will happen to my job. I cannot leave my son on their own. What do I do? Let me tell you, this is a part where you actually thank God for the strength of community. I've been very intentional about the people I've kept around me, just doing life, whether when we were single and now older with families, children. And one of my friends actually has 3 boys, the same age as my son. And I thought at this point, I have to tell somebody, because how do I hack the next few days? And I called her, and she, without even me finishing the sentence to ask, she was like, you don't even have to say anything. Bring your son to my house. So I packed a few of his things. Of course, school was out of session because of elections. And we drove to my friend's house. And you can imagine at this point, my son is very vulnerable being around, you know, people he doesn't know. And I think he had created this notion that all nannies are not to be trusted. So when we got into this house, as much as he was happy to see his friends, the help came out of the kitchen and he froze. And the first thing he did is run to me and start crying. And we quickly made the connection. Now the question was, I'm leaving him here. There's a help. What does that mean to him, or what does it mean for him? And it was such a difficult decision to make at that point, because my child was in distress, and God knows, my heart felt like somebody was ripping it out of its socket. And I had to make the difficult decision to still leave him. And I remember my friend telling me, just leave him. I'll hold him, go with him upstairs. Just leave. So I kissed him, encouraged him, loved on him, and told him a story that he can follow his friends upstairs. And then I tiptoed out. By the time I was getting to the car, he had realized that I had left. And all I could hear is my son screaming at the top of his lungs, "Mommy, mommy, don't leave me." I can tell you this as a parent or just a human being. I don't know how to describe how I felt. Every part of me just wanted to go back and take my child and call work and tell them, this is not going to work. I just can't make it. Whatever decision they make, they make. And a part of me was telling me, you're a single mom. If you lose this job, what will that child eat? And I made the difficult decision to get into the car and drive off. I've done many difficult things in my life, but I have to tell you that was the most difficult decision I've ever made. Oh. I remember this must have been the 7th of August because the next day I needed to be at the Bomas of Kenya. So I drove home crying, got into the house and just collapsed on my bed. I was so conflicted, absolutely conflicted. I didn't know what to do. And I just made a prayer for God to help me figure out how to handle the next 2 days. That is the day of elections and, of course, the waiting time for the elections to be counted, for them to stream into Bomas. And remember, I was the point person there, of course, with a few reporters on the ground. And then I got a text from my friend that I'd left my son with, and she said, he has calmed down. Focus on what you need to do. We have your back. And I have to tell you, those words really gave me strength to even refocus my energy on, I need to sleep, I need to get ready, I need to pack a few clothes, because when you're covering the elections, you don't sleep at home. The company gets you a hotel closer to the office in case of any breaking news that you're easily accessible. And the next day, I made it to Bomas. And I have to be honest, I barely slept. So you can imagine waking up, looking yourself in the mirror, puffy eyes, and here you are supposed to be in front of a camera. And let me tell you, if there's a season of my life, I have never really been so happy and grateful for anyone whoever created and made makeup is this season, because you put it on, hide the flaws, and you go. Sort of like a mask, you know. So I put on the mask and drove to Bomas of Kenya. And it was all systems go. When you get there, no one has time for your issues and everything. I got into the rhythm of a grind. We got what needed done, but I wasn't 100%. I was struggling. I was really struggling. And normally when you're at optimum, you're able to capture things that are happening around you, be able to work ahead of time, be able to even give direction in terms of to the studio of what you'd want to capture, what you'd want to report on. I won't lie, I was struggling with that because My mind was clouded with all these things that were happening at home. Did my son sleep well? Is he okay? How is he handling it? What is happening? What can I do? I can't see him tonight. All these things. And still keeping a straight face to bring the news to the nation. The first day came and went, and I survived it. One or two people noticed that my eyes were a bit swollen, and I gave some excuse. And after a very long day, drove to the hotel we were booked in and slept, making sure that by the time I'm waking up and the other news anchor has come in so that we change shifts. And because I was on the early morning, I woke up in the wee hours of the morning, barely slept again, and again put on the mask, makeup, hide the flaws, and off I went to Bombers. And whilst I was driving there, of course, made a call to my friend. How is he? How is he doing? And hearing him cry in the background, it's like he knew it was me calling to find out. My God, I wished I had never made that call. Cried all the way to the Bombers. And as I parked, got myself together and got into the grind of things. I think at this point, the newsroom had put two and two together. They were either not getting what they need, and they had to send somebody else from studio to come and cover. And you know the way you feel you're being pushed to the side without anyone telling you? And to be honest, I didn't push back. I remember there's this selfie I took on that morning just to see if you could tell something was off. I still have it on my phone, and we'll put the picture up so that you see when I say that a lot of us go through life looking a certain way, but what's behind the scenes is so chaotic. If we all could tell our stories, you'd be surprised at how much weight people carry around, yet do it with such grace every single day. And when it was over and they called it, I remember I took another picture saying, peace, it's being real. And the only thing I was thinking about is, I need to get home. But remember, if I get home and get my son, it means we're going home without a nanny, which also puts my work at risk. So what do? So the choice was take the child, and thankfully we were given 1 or 2 days, I think, of just recuperating from the long hours of the elections and covering the same. And that's when now I was trying to put together, what do I do moving forward? Thankfully, my friends told me to stay as long as I could. And when I found somebody to hold fort, I was able to go back home with my son. But it was never the same. I mean, you could only imagine this young mind was dealing with so much, and every day I had to leave him at home with yet a new face. The crying, don't leave me, just was breaking me. Eventually, trying to balance this thing out at home, at work, no one to tell about what's going on. So the weight at work is still the same. And if you try to falter, you push to the side, the next person takes, and they keep running with it. And you realize opportunities are passing you by. You are missing out on opportunities that would actually push you further in your journey as a journalist and all that. But I had to make a decision: survive or break. So I chose to let go of some opportunities. And I chose to find a way to keep sort of giving life to myself. so that I can be able to show up as a mother to my son. Fast forward to 2018, trying to do this whole balance thing. Some days it worked, some days I fell flat on my face. And I cried so hard. Sometimes I would go into the washroom in the workplace and just cry hard, trying to figure it out. What I did not know is that it had taken so much of a toll on me that I hadn't realized that my demeanor as a person was changing slowly. And eventually, I remember sometime in 2018, it must have been when Harry and Meghan Markle were getting married. And I'm always so fascinated by the British monarchy. And it happened that the Saturday that they were actually getting married, I was on duty. So this is information and content that comes easy for me because I've been fascinated about them since the days of Princess Diana. There was just something about her that was so different. And it stayed with me. So I followed that history. And now having to see her son getting married was such a big deal. So I was happy I was the one who was actually on set doing the live coverage, as we also followed it online and with the rest of the world. And I remember the daytime when the wedding was happening, and that whole bit went well, did the 1 o'clock news, and kept going. But what I did not realize is that the long and odd hours were taking such a toll on me. By the time we were getting to the evening, and I remember I'd been given leeway to wear this pretty dress, purple, because purple is the color of royalty, just to go with the day's thing, because the headlines at that point were all about the royal wedding. And I remember doing the 9 p.m. bulletin, and everything started off well. And at some point, I started feeling lightheaded, and all of a sudden, because I normally wear specs, it's just that I can do without them if I don't need to read something, or if the autocue is close enough, I can do without them. All of a sudden, the autocue, the words were not lining up. It's like they were getting jumbled up. I was getting hazy. I was feeling hot. I was breathing harder. I couldn't hold a breath through a sentence. And I remember the director asking me in my ear, Gigi, are you okay? And because you can't say anything as you're reading the story, you can only nod or say something when the story is running. I told him I'm not. And at this point, even doing what came naturally to me, read an autocue, the stuttering was happening so much because there were all these things that were happening to me and I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. And the harder I tried, the worse it became, to a point that the editor on duty came to the gallery. And I remember him texting me when one story was running for, Gladys, you need to focus on the story. Read your story before the story goes on air. And at that point, I'm like, I can't say what's wrong. I can't tell anyone what I'm dealing with because I can't understand. My body just seemed to be giving way and literally betraying me. And after that bulletin, I remember the editor walking in a half for so much hard work going into the bulletin and you couldn't just deliver it smoothly. So I'm kicking myself about that. I'm trying to figure out what was wrong with me. At some point, I remember holding on to the table that I was standing next to so that I don't fall because I felt like I was swaying. And even one of the studio tech guys asked me, hey, Glado leo uko sawa? And I just told them, it's a hard day. I guess it's just a long day. And I remember driving home crying so hard because that's the only way I could get the emotions out because I just couldn't explain what was happening, but I knew something was off. But I hadn't put the dots that the threat to the most important human being in my life had started a flurry of activities, and you could say a snowball effect in my own life that started making me either doubt myself, started making me doubt myself as as a journalist, as a mother. It had really shaken up my confidence, and it was even affecting the things that came naturally to me. And as I was doing all that, the pictures that were taken during the day, and even in between those months where I was struggling, you wouldn't tell anything was happening, not unless you pay good attention. My eyes, or the smile I would make when I'm taking those pictures, never really got to my eyes. And I could see it, and there's nothing much I could do about it. I think at this point, I will pause on it because, as I said, there was a snowball effect that now made so many other things come to the fore. And I will go sharing my experience as we go along here on Curveballs. But the lessons that stuck with me during this season, and it was a year and a half of this turmoil, is it is okay not to be okay. And I know you've heard that, especially recently, in reference to mental health. And it could be a cliche by now, but let me tell you something. When you are in the thick of things, it is okay not to be okay is a statement that gives life to you, because at least you feel that there's nothing wrong with you, and it's just that life is happening to you. Why do I say this? Because in the thick of that experience, my first instinct was to start doubting myself. Am I a good parent? Did I make the right choices? Did I focus so much on work that I missed out on the fact that my son was having a hard time at home? Were the long and odd hours that I signed off on as a part and parcel of my journalistic journey, did they put my son at risk? At that point, because it started affecting who I am and how I do what I do, things that just come easy for me, was I good enough? Did I actually deserve to still stand in front of a camera and call myself a journalist? And I kicked myself. Oh, I kicked myself. I can tell you many times where if I was on reporting duty, I had the leeway to keep going to the washroom and just let it out, because it's the only way I knew how to handle it. And there are many times when I had to still cry, but be in front of a camera, whether doing a bulletin or shooting Women in Power, a show I used to host. And I'll just go to the washroom, put the eye drops, which I became addicted to because the crying and the work needed to happen at the same time, but the eye drops, 2-3 seconds, the eyes are wiped, and you go about your business. But at some point, it became so bad, it started affecting my eyesight, because the eye drops have, what is it called? A steroid, which is what now was affecting my eyesight. This, of course, became more clearer in hindsight after the fact. So it is okay not to be okay, which gives you leeway to ask for help. And I thank God, because that came to me, that I reached out to my friend with the 3 boys to help me out, and they were able to help me navigate that season. But there's something else that also is difficult, because I wasn't able to tell anyone at work who would have also helped me navigate the atmosphere in the newsroom. That it's also okay to accept help, because at times you might ask for it, but you are too proud to take it. It has to happen in tandem. Ask and be okay to receive it, so that you're able to also offload some of the baggage and be able to show up in places that you can't put a pause on, because it perhaps puts risk to your everyday, bread and butter. The other thing that I walked away with, of course, as I mentioned earlier, and you hear me say this over and over again here, have a trusted community, people that can walk with you in spaces and seasons that no one else can, and they will love you and support you whether or not it makes sense. That trusted community made a difference. I will not lie, when I look back, it just is just by the grace of God that I was able to make it and not literally lose it. Because I had people in my life who would take my son when it was too much to handle both worlds. People who would say it's okay to have the boy over as you just have a few days to just sleep and rest. People who just counseled me on what to do when I couldn't see a way out. And something else that I think I need to put out there is that empathy can change someone's life, literally save someone's life. There are many people who saw me in a different element, who didn't understand why I missed work so much, why the excuses about the high turnover of the house helps, especially after that incident, and having to call and say I can't come in because I don't have a help. There are people who thought I was making an excuse. And I remember even being told at some point that there was an assumption that I was just lazy and I just didn't want to show up. And when I would get this feedback, it made even things worse, because my worry is that if I said what I was dealing with, I would be judged through that lens. So I chose to keep quiet. But even the keeping quiet wasn't helping, because I became so recluse. All I did was show up at work, do what I need to do, and go home. My social life just shrunk, whether in the office or outside. I was literally in survival mode. And I wished somebody could just see through the struggle and ask me, how can I be of help? It would have made it easier. And yes, I know I didn't say so people didn't know how to help. But imagine at times, especially in my line of work, when the pressure to perform is so much, you just have no choice but to hide behind the mask to perform. And it has costed so much for so many of my colleagues in different ways. And I can only say that I'm just lucky that I came out on the other side intact. So yeah, you can go even on my IG page and see the many pictures that I took in between that season. You would never have told. Society expects perfection, and at times it teaches us to hide the flaws in our lives so that we can give you what you want. But the truth of the matter is, if we all spoke about the experiences we're going through, or at least gave a glimpse of what you struggle with, it would literally give a lifeline to somebody who thinks life is just hard for them. Because when you open up social media, everyone seems to be having it good. Mbona nini mbaya na mimi? What am I doing wrong? And people they drown in such thoughts. And this is why I decided to create this platform, Curveballs, when life happens, so that we are real about what happens when no one is watching, because it has a great impact on who we are and how we show up, and the resilience and strength it keeps giving us as we keep doing life. This is just one of the many curveballs I have had to deal with, and I will get to hopefully share others as we go along. Mine is to encourage you to join me as we shed light on those parts of us in retrospect have transformed our lives for the better, or given us the strength and zeal to keep showing up. Again, this is a space for real people with real issues living in a real world. whose journey will inspire and affirm that we all have a cross to carry. So, what is your story? Talk to us on our socials and let's encourage each other as we face one day at a time. See you next time.